I always trusted the government because I thought they only went after criminals or threats. Then, I was taken from my home without charges, paperwork, or an explanation. I woke up restrained in a facility that officially didn't exist, with doctors who refused to say my name. When they released me, I realized I was never supposed to remember any of it. Today's story is entitled, I Was Taken by a Government Program That Officially Doesn't Exist, and it was posted to the r/no sleep subreddit by Throwaway Black Site. And it starts like this. I used to laugh at stories about black sites and secret government programs. I believed in paperwork, warrants, and due process. I believed that if you followed the rules and lived quietly, no one would ever have a reason to knock on your door in the middle of the night. That belief ended at 2:36 a.m. The power went out at first. Not a blackout, just my apartment. The hum of my refrigerator cut off. My fan died, and then the room fell into a thick, unnatural silence. Before I could even grab my phone, someone knocked. Calm, but firm, like they already knew I was awake. When I opened the door, there were 4 men in dark uniforms. No badges, no insignia. One of them said my full legal name, including my middle name, and asked me to step outside. I didn't get the chance to refuse before a needle went into my neck and the hallway tilted sideways. I woke up, strapped to a metal table under fluorescent lights so bright they hurt to look at. My arms and legs were restrained with thick cuffs that hummed softly like they were powered. The room smelled like disinfectant and something burnt underneath it. There were people standing behind a glass wall watching me like I was an animal in an enclosure. Some wore military uniforms, others wore lab coats. None of them made eye contact. A woman finally stepped into the room. She didn't introduce herself. She just checked a tablet and said, "Subject is conscious." Subject. I remembered that. I asked where I was. My voice sounded weak, like it wasn't fully mine anymore. She ignored the question and injected something in my arm. A cold sensation spread through my veins, followed by a pressure inside my skull that made me scream. Images flooded my vision, numbers, symbols, shifting shapes that refused to stay still. My heart raced so hard I thought it would tear itself apart. Baseline reaction within expected parameters, someone said over an intercom. They ran tests for days, or weeks, I'm not entirely sure. There was no windows and no clocks. They kept the lights on constantly. Sometimes they deprived me of sleep. Other times they forced me to stay awake with chemicals that burned, going in and left my thoughts sharp and painful. They drew blood. They took spinal fluid. They scanned my brain while playing sounds that made my teeth ache. Once, they placed a helmet over my head and told me to focus on a screen showing random patterns. When I did, the patterns changed. That's when I realized what they wanted. They weren't just observing me, they were using me. They asked me to describe sensations after each procedure. They asked if I felt different, stronger, more aware. When I didn't answer fast enough, the pain returned, controlled, precise, like punishment calibrated by algorithm. I overheard things through vents and open doors, phrases like cognitive expansion, viability threshold, and civilian compatibility. Once, I heard someone say, "If this phase fails, wipe him." Eventually, they stopped restraining me. That terrified me more than the straps ever did. They gave me simple tests at first: memory, reflexes, pattern recognition. I passed them all easily. Too easily. I started noticing things before they happened, anticipating questions, finishing sentences people hadn't even completed yet. The doctors exchanged looks when that happened. One night, the woman from the beginning stood at the foot of my bed. She finally spoke to me like a human being. "You were selected because you are unremarkable," she said. "No criminal record, no dependents, no public footprint. If this works, you'll never know what we prevented. If it fails, no one will notice you're gone." I asked what they did to me. She hesitated. We adjusted the parameters that were already there. The next day, they let me go. No explanation, no paperwork. They drove me home, unlocked my door, and left me standing in my apartment like nothing had happened. My power was back on, My phone showed I'd missed 3 weeks of calls. My job had reported me absent. My landlord had posted an eviction notice. Officially, I had never been detained. But I wasn't the same. I don't like sleep like I used to. I don't dream. My thoughts feel layered, like there's always something running underneath them. I catch myself predicting outcomes before choices are made. Sometimes I know what someone is going to say just before they say it. And sometimes, late at night, I feel watched. Not by cameras, by systems. I know that they're still monitoring me. I see the same cars too often. I hear faint clicks on my phone line. I receive emails that vanish seconds after opening them. They didn't release me because the experiments ended. They released me because it entered its next phase. If I disappear again, no one will ever know why. And if I talk too much, I won't disappear at all. The end. That was a really good story. I appreciated it. I really liked how it was written and the pacing and all that. I think first off, we could talk about what we could have done differently in this situation. Well, one, that kind of begs the question, would you take this deal? If you knew that you had to be kind of poked and prodded and tested on by the government in some hidden away government site for 3 weeks, and then you got some type of kind of psychic powers almost, would you take that deal? Would you take that deal if you knew that you were able to expand it, kind of like you had the Force or something from Star Wars? You knew that the more you worked at it, you could just become more and more powerful. It was just kind of like opening the door for you. I think if I had that second option, for sure, I would totally take it. Yeah. Now, what could we do differently in this situation? Well, if they really did choose him because he was so unremarkable and very disappearable to the point where nobody would really notice that he was gone, I would make sure to play all the games right. I would make sure to do all the tests as best as I could so that they wouldn't have any reason to just end it and get rid of me. Now, on the other end of that, if he was to fail, at a point they did say that he would just be wiped and sent back. So I don't know if that means full brain wiped and you're just kind of a actual blank slate, or if that means that they would just wipe out the time that they had took and then you would have just magically appeared back in your apartment 3 weeks later. So I guess that would almost be like a choice in and of itself that you could take differently. Would you choose to press through and get the psychic powers, or would you choose to just leave and not remember any of it? That's a very interesting thing to think about and to ponder on. Now, what else could you do differently? Well, I think you should play along with it after you finish, just like how they did. I think that is a smart thing to do. It would not be very smart if you just immediately, without any training or kind of preparation, just said, oh, I know you're listening and I know you're still watching me and blah, 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 blah. I think too often in the world we play our hand too early. And I think that transitions really good into the lesson for today's video and today's story. Make sure to not play your hand too early. Make sure to not underestimate what you have and to not evaluate what you have until somebody else gives you a valuation first. If I think that I could make $20,000 a year with this skill that I've worked on for maybe 5 or 10 years, and I go and I am in this job interview and the person doing the interview says, how much would you like to make a year? And I say, oh, I'd like to make $20,000 a year. They're going to say, yeah, that sounds great. Now, what if I went into that interview and I was thinking, okay, if I get 20 grand, I'll be happy. And they said, well, how much would you like to make? And you said, well, how much are you willing to give me? And they say, well, other people in the field are making somewhere about 60. So as long as you're good with being about there, then that's fine. And then you could reply and say, well, actually, I'm kind of an expert in this field. I've been doing it for 5 or 10 years. How about 65? My point with all that is, yes, of course, that was a made-up scenario. But that is a very good scenario. In almost all interviews, they ask you, well, how much would you like to make? If it's, kind of a higher level and not an entry-level job, and if it's not a minimum wage type of job, then yeah, they're going to do that. And you can leverage yourself. You can leverage your experience. You can leverage your know-how. You can leverage your alternate skills that would help you to be good here. So basically, my point is, you are much more powerful than you think. You have much more going for you than you think. A lot of times in our lives, we don't value the experience we have. We don't value the time we have doing things. And it ends up biting us in the butt. It ends up making it so that we get the lower paycheck instead of what we could be getting. It makes it so that we do not get all that we could. Now, with that being said, do I think you should just take advantage of everybody you come across with this? No, absolutely not. But what I am saying is be an advocate for yourself. Be willing to stand up for yourself. Be willing to tell people, I am worth this much. But in a world where so many people are wanting instant answers and are wanting to do things so quickly, because just about everything, all of the knowledge that every human has ever learned is at our fingertips within a few seconds. In this world, you have to learn to be reactive instead of active. If you throw the first punch and they block, you lose. I mean, if they can step around it and you fully exposed yourself, if you fully exposed what you're thinking, if you fully exposed what you're going to do, it makes you very, very vulnerable for people who are willing to take advantage of you. So if you're willing to take that extra time to think about it, to think about what you are, what you have, what you're trying to accomplish, and then let other people play and you react around them, it will be much easier to try and accomplish what you're trying to do. So with all that being said, I'm Cece. This has been The Crucible of Character. I really enjoyed today's story, and if you did too, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's. And with that, I love you all. Goodbye.